So this is a recap of the May weekend at PittRace in 2024. This is my first weekend as an expert in the ASRA series, and I want to make this video to help me move past this one. Quite frankly, I was having a really good weekend up until this race that I'm about to show you. I want to show you the insanity that happened so then I can move on to the actual good parts of it. So this is Ultralightweight Superbike, and there's only, as you can see, it's obviously really wet. There's only 3 experts and 1 amateur on this grid. So I'm starting third, and here we go. And I get presented with my biggest fear in my first corner of my first ever expert race, which is the choice of hitting a rider or trying to avoid him. And I flipped the bike over in one of the more spectacular 360s you'll probably ever see. If it was dry, I've watched this 600 times at this point. I probably could have gone left. It looked like he was going left. He changed direction. I just kept building brake pressure. And eventually it ended up just coming over on me. I know a better rider could have probably avoided this, but I was so intent on not hitting him that I didn't realize the rear was coming up that much on me. In the dry, I would have made a decision. Yeah, God, his leg is right there. I would have made a decision to try to go to the left and try to miss him, but it wasn't dry, and I would have washed it out and I would have hit him. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know how I would have done it.
I wasn't going to hit him?
What's that?
Did you see it?
Oh, yeah.
Was there any chance I wasn't going to
No,
hit him?
you were going to get him. No, I don't know what else you could have done.
So anyway, that's how my weekend ended, but I did get a race before that, which was the GTL, the 25-minute mini endurance race, though I could already tell this thing was going to get shortened because they were running behind on opening ceremonies and all of that kind of stuff. So as you can see, it's drizzling for this. It had just started drizzling for this. I've never been on, this is only my second time to this track, and I have no idea what this track is going to be like, you know, in these conditions, but we're all on slicks and we're getting ready to go. When I came to this track, because I've been putting a lot of pressure on myself for, you know, having an expert plate, and the fact that I realize I am probably the most underqualified expert, certainly in the Midwest, possibly the entire United States. What I wanted to do, I had 2 goals when I came to this track. Don't embarrass yourself, and then run sub 205s. I knew if I ran sub 205s that I wouldn't be completely embarrassing being here. The first time out here, the quickest I ever ran was a 211 like 0.1, which would be fine if you were on, you know, an intermediate track day and just kind of hanging out. But this time I wasn't, so there was some pressure on me. So qualifying at a 203.3, knowing I had a whole lot more in the tank, I actually felt pretty good about this. So I was going to use this GTL. Luckily, GTL was the first race of the day. I was going to use this just as an extended, you know, practice session. Because I don't really know what race conditions are like at an expert pace. There's also quite a few 400 and 390 and 300 riders in this, because the 400 GT race is going on at the same time. They're very good. So here we go. I got one of my patented really poor starts, and I am behind my favorite looking bike I saw all weekend, especially with the matching leathers. That Yamaha R7, dude, that thing is so cool looking. The good news about rewatching this footage, because today has actually been the first day I've even looked at the footage, because I've just been so upset with myself about what happened in the ULSB race. I can see where I'm losing all the time. I know the 2 major points that I'm losing time are the exits out of the 2 big right-handed sweepers, that being 6 and 17. And where I'm making the most time is through the S's. Even though it doesn't look pretty, I'm making time through the S's. Now, I know all the people in this race, at least the clump that I'll get stuck in, so I'm actually going to be able to get around him here. That's where I made most of my passes, was on that 4th left-hander S. My left turns are still far stronger than my right-hand turns. Unfortunately, most of the tracks I've ever run are clockwise tracks. and then you get turn 14, which is just the most butt-puckering turn that I've ever been to. So I'll end up noticing that most of the people in this clump are pretty unsure about the track conditions. So I'm letting off quite a bit through that really fast kink there, which I believe is 16. I'll do it through the whole race. We'll kind of see that the majority of the riders that get in this clump are running 206s, which isn't that quick. I mean, because I know all of us qualified quicker than that, but pretty much everyone's running at 206 because I don't think anyone's really that sure about the track. And here's where I made my only big mistake of the day. Running that turn wide. I know why I did it. It's because I'm running it in too late. Oh, sorry, I'm not running it in too deep. Actually, I'm running it in just fine. I'm trying to hit the 2.5 board, but I'm not shifting quick enough. So this is my second weekend on GP shift, and I just haven't gotten down where to put that I need to put my foot under the shifter before I actually, start braking so that I'm ready to go. And so I'm hitting all those shifts way late. You'll actually pretty much see it on every lap of this race, and I'll cut a couple laps out of this so you don't have to see the full GTL race, even though it was shortened, so it ends up being like 9 laps instead of 7 or something like that. So that R7 obviously gets right past me. I know that there's 3 or 4 bikes right behind me, and I'm kind of content to just run right behind the R7 for a while because I still don't trust these conditions. And then I see another great passing opportunity. I'm right here, and I end up backing out of it, which is fine because I don't think it was the greatest thing to push the envelope there because I didn't want to be leading by myself, so I just cut forward on 1 lap. I'm right behind him again. This one, the fact that I didn't just take this, in my head I'm like, all right, Matt, clearly you're not pushing to try to get a result on this, so let's try to work on some shit and just understand what exactly is happening, on a drizzling track, but all running on slicks. So I'm going to cut to a couple of these where the whole clump of riders just gets past me because my confidence was a little bit shaken by that point. I had a little bit of a wiggle once. It was something I did, but I just blamed it on rain in my head. So that's an Aprilia RS660 that gets by me. In 17, there is one of the fast 400s that gets. There's, I think, 2 or 3 pretty quick 400s or 390s, which if they're coming past us, I know he's a better rider than me at this point. So I'll be able to obviously catch him on the straightaway, but they're just a better rider. All right, there goes the other one. I think that was in 12, then 13, then 14. Okay, so that's either a 400 or a 390. I'm not positive about that. It's interesting. You can go up to about 100 miles an hour and you're about the same speed as them on a SV650, but then they start to peter out. And then finally, a Gen 2 SV650 gets by me. So now I am at the back of what will become a big clump. This group of riders, that R7 being at the front of it, and then all the way to the caboose, which is me at this point, we are in a clump, and we kind of stay in a clump towards the end of the race. And so on these straightaways, you can just keep seeing, because the wind just blows it off of your face, you can keep seeing that there's tons of rain, but it's not affecting grip yet. What it's affecting is my psyche. And on the Friday practice before, I saw how quickly that rain can just fall in. So I'm kind of like just always constantly looking just to see, is there going to be some gigantic puddle somewhere that wasn't there the lap before? And so I can see on my lap timer, we're literally running 206s this entire time. This clump is running 206s. This clump is capable of much more than 206s. But I figure if these guys aren't doing it, I'm not going to try to push to do it. So I'm going to follow with this. My goal at this point is to try to get one of these riders by the end of the race. I'm going to rack up experience on this, And ultimately, I want to put a good showing in on the 3 other sprint races that I have. I got 1 sprint race after this race, and then I got 2 on Sunday. And Sunday, despite what the weatherman said, ended up turning out to be a really nice day after the morning. But so we got the SV650 and the 660 right in front of us. So the fast 400s or 390s or whatever they are have actually made their way out in front. And now we've got a lightweight battle going on right here. So the 2 guys in front of me will actually jockey for position a couple times, I think. And I can also tell, because I've ridden behind that 518 that's 2 in front of me right now for quite a bit, and I've seen the guy in front of me before, and I just know none of us are pushing because everybody is seeing the same droplets forming on their helmet that I am. But I'm still going to try to get one of them before the end of this race. I just don't know which one it's going to be because I don't know which one's going to be in front by that time. So we got the white flag now. Who's it going to be? So I'm going to overshoot this turn one more time. Kind of looking at that guy who's going off. So now there's 4 of us because I don't know where that 390, 400, whatever it was just went. Now I know if I can get into the S's at a pretty close spot to the 660 in front of me, I can get around him on that 4th S, because that is the one spot on this entire track where I've seen to have an advantage over other people. I'm at a disadvantage to most places because I'm just not as good of a rider, but that spot I'll be able to get him, so I'm kind of committed to trying to stay as close to that 660 as I can. So I'll try to bring it to the 2.5 board. And I go a little bit wide on there. But again, I'm not sure why, because these guys are better riders than me, but they're giving up a lot of time in these S's, which allows me to pull up alongside on the sort of blind S right there. And now as soon as I got that pass, I was like, all right, forget what you've just been doing, try to put in a fucking fast lap. So I actually run the rest of this lap harder than I've been running the rest of the race. So the rest of the race I'd run 206s the whole time. And on this one I ran a 203. Once I got around him, I was like, all right, well, we're going to try to keep that spot. I need the ego boost going into the sprint races because I've kind of just gotten my ass kicked by, you know, everybody else out here. So I run this a little bit longer than I normally do, or normally had this race. And it's just basically don't hit the sealer too hard. Ran over it, whatever, power down. We just got to make it to the checkered flag. If I hold on, if this goes all the way to the first turn, he's going to get past me. The thing is, I don't have to make it to the first turn. I just have to make it to the checkered. And made it to the checkered. So, if nothing else, that race, though it didn't look very good, it actually gave me a lot of confidence going into what I thought was going to be the rest of the weekend, and then ULSB happened, and I did a whole bunch of acrobatics on a motorcycle that I didn't literally know that you could even do. But I don't know. I had a couple more races I was signed up for, but obviously didn't get to do them. I probably could have done them. We could have gotten that bike back into running shape. The entire front fairing and fairing stay got broken, but it wasn't... I could have just plugged everything together, written a number on the front. I could have rode some laps, but the problem is I think I hurt my hand again. I'm not really positive. Both of them are really bruised. I've broken my hand before, but I don't know if the right one is actually broken. It may just be bruised. I bought an $18 Amazon splint because when I broke this hand at Road America, I remember paying $2,500 to have x-rays done. And for them to tell me, well, you could put it in a splint and just don't, work it too hard. And then I paid $294 on that splint on my HSA. And I'm like, well, for $2,500, I can buy another fucking, SV650. So if this doesn't feel better by this weekend, I'll go do something about it. If it starts to feel a lot better, I'm going to hope it's just bruised and I'll be ready by Blackhawk, which is in like 5 weeks from now. The really nice thing about that is that flying bike that landed on my head, I mean, I was looking at it. I saw that 109 coming. You just tell yourself, like, I just hit my head on the ground during that flip, and I happen to be looking up at this thing. I'm like, I still feel all right now. And time slows down. You're like, this is the part where I have my first seriously, impactful motorcycle injury. And then the bike hit my head and I was able to get up. And quite frankly, I was fine. And I couldn't believe it. I ran over to the bike. I tried to lift it up. I kind of feel bad about this in that I didn't try harder to lift it up, but I knew I just got hit with a motorcycle way in my head. And I was like, I don't actually know that I'm totally fine. So I just ran off the track. And I know that they threw a waving yellow, so I just watched the rest of it. The crash truck and them, they came over, they pushed the bike to the side. So ultimately, it was probably the right idea to just run from it. Not the most manly thing to do, but I wasn't certain because I've never been in that situation before. But anyway, so I've been a little bit down on myself for this, but then I got to thinking about it. And quite frankly, I've actually had a pretty awesome last 3 weeks. So I'm just going to tell you about it really quickly. So about like 3 weeks ago, I know that I've been having to make a trip down to Barber. Or, sorry, I didn't have to make a trip to Barber. I knew I had to make a trip down to our sister offices for work in Mississippi and Alabama, and I knew what was down there is Barber. So I've been planning on this for like 3 months. I was going to take my little stupid trailer and go work in Mississippi and Alabama for a week, and then I would end it with a trip to Barber. And that turned out to be really awesome. I ended up putting 2,100 miles on this little tiny Chinese pot metal trailer. Made it out to Barber. What an absolutely cool track. I would love to try it again. I still think PittRace is the better track. In fact, I would say PittRace is the best track in the United States you can run. Barber's in the next tier. I think PittRace is just the best. But maybe I got to spend a little bit more time at Barber because most people I run into say Barber is the place. So I also got to blow up an SV650 at Barber. On the last session of that Saturday, I blew a freeze plug, which threw all of the coolant into the engine. It didn't drop anything on the track, so don't worry about that. But basically, that effectively ended my weekend of track riding. But what it didn't do was make it so I couldn't have fun for the rest of the weekend, because if you're going to break down at Barber Motorsports Park, because they have the coolest damn thing on the planet. They have the vintage motorcycle museum there. So I spent the entire Sunday there instead of riding, and quite frankly, I wouldn't have been able to do that if I didn't blow that thing up. So it turned out to be a blessing in disguise. Then a couple of weeks later, actually this last Wednesday, after fixing that the freeze plug, we went to Barber. And I told myself, I'm going to try to blow this engine up in the first 2 sessions. If it doesn't blow up, I'm going to be all right. We can make it to pit. Blackhawk turned out to be, perfect conditions, good day. Ultimately, I know that my goal this year at Blackhawk, which is, I'm going to say my home track, my goal as an expert is to get to the 118s because I think that would be respectable. I don't know how I'm going to get there yet. I know how I can get to respectable at Pittsburgh. I don't know how I can get there yet at Blackhawk. Blackhawk's it's so much more physical and whatnot than pretty much anywhere else I've run. I did run a couple 121 5s or something during that track day, just trying to get reacquainted with it. And so race pace, obviously you usually drop a lot, but that one's going to be a struggle. But Blackhawk was a good day. And then, so for Pitt, I got invited by a fellow racer that I'd met at one of the races. We'd had a couple good battles. He came by. We talked for a while. We'd just been talking during the off season. He said, "Hey, I'm going out to Pitt. You want to join me?" And I said, "That would be freaking awesome." So I kind of got to have like a factory rider experience. Every track I've ever gone to, I just sleep in a tent and whatnot and, just deal with the elements. He offered a spot in his camper. And we just had a freaking awesome weekend. I did drive an entire truck stint inside of this camper. Or sorry, not in the camper, but I drove the Ram 3500 for an entire tank of gas. I've never driven with a trailer bigger than my 4x8 before. And I will tell you, that was scarier than anything I did on the weekend racing. I don't know how you guys that drive these campers do it and just are so nonchalant about it. But I admire that because I was white-knuckling it the entire time. But, I mean, I wanted to put in my dues. I wanted to take one of the driving stints, and I did. And so it was tough to pack all the bikes in, but we did it. And then Friday. I knew Friday was going to be the only clear day that we had, so I made a point to set my alarm and make sure that I was outside by the time that the sunset was coming up, because I didn't want to miss the sunset over PittRace. I remembered it from last year, and I remembered it being pretty damn breathtaking, pretty damn awesome, and I'm not mad at myself for setting that early alarm and getting to see this. And then we just got to, unlike one of my normal race events or track days or anything like that, pit with a whole bunch of other people, and the guy on the bike to my right is a very, very, very fast rider from the Midwest, and I kind of feel bad because I'm just asking so many dumb questions and whatnot. But anytime you get to be around somebody like that and you can just ask him questions, I'm just like a sponge. You can't get that information, from the internet or reading a forum or something like that. And a lot of these things you have to experience for yourself. But when you're actually talking to somebody that knows what they're doing, like the rider on that ZX6, honestly, it was super valuable to me to hear what he's talking about, feeling on the track and whatnot, and then try to apply it to, your own riding out there. And I got to see Chris right there take a victory in the amateur GTL. If I'm not mistaken, that would also make him the points leader in the amateur GTL, which is pretty damn cool. And I got to flip an SV650, which I don't think a lot of people have actually gotten to do before. Actually do a full 360-degree flip. I'm actually probably pretty unique in that regard. I got to prove out that my Helite, airbag system worked really good, and I didn't break my entire head, and I justified the purchase of an expensive helmet. And I finally killed this stupid fucking Micron exhaust that I've been just looking for a reason to get rid of. I would have gotten rid of it a long time ago, but M4 stopped making the first gen. I talked to him on the phone last week, 2 weeks ago, and they don't make it. But I finally found one. Somebody's willing to sell me one that they've got stashed away. So I don't know how I'm going to fix the new Hell Master cylinder. Actually, I was joking with Eric at SBS Superbike Supply, saying that I'm pretty sure I could flip myself over the bars pretty easily with the new Master. And he said, that's not a good idea. And I should have listened to him, because it wasn't a good idea. I shouldn't have done that. But I'm hoping that little piece right here, that I can pull that and put a new one in, because if I can, then I can fix this thing. If not, I got to go back to the stock Master until I figure something else out. And my poor Goose, I'm happy the Goose, actually survived it. This will be the ugliest bike you've ever seen when I make it back to the track. I will look like a real SV650 rider, because I am going to stitch this thing up and glue this thing back together in the ugliest fashion you have ever seen. And that's what the Mad Max bike looks like right now. So that was my weekend at Pittsburgh. It wasn't the one I wanted for my first expert weekend. I can't say I'm disappointed with the effort I put into it. I can't say I'm disappointed with the times I put into it. I'm going back and forth on what I could have done differently on the flip and not hitting a guy. And I could have done something differently, but I don't feel bad because neither of us ended up in the hospital. So onward and upward. We got a long season ahead of us, so you watch this far. Thanks for watching.